when it works great, it works great. But oh my goodness, when it doesn't, it's just a mess.
Riding along, and suddenly it was air out immediately.
Well, I didn't hear a little pop. I heard blam, and I've got sealant all over the place.
Maybe somebody has a better way of cleaning them than I do, but even with sealant remover, I had a hard time getting it off the tire.
I'm completely sold on it for mountain bike. It's I would never go back on mountain bike. Road bike, I'm still a little up in the air about it.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Tell Me About Your Bike, the podcast about the meaning of life, the universe, and bicycling. When it comes to tubeless tires, I used to be a curmudgeon. Years after all my friends had switched to tubeless, I was still riding with tubes. I liked my old-fashioned tubes that I'd grown up with. I knew if I was stranded miles from cell phone reception, I could fix my flat tire. I didn't want to depend on a plug and some sealant. With a tiny kit, I could patch both tire and tube. That seemed like a great convenience to me. I also had one disastrous attempt of setting up tubeless tires on my own over wall-to-wall carpeting. I never got the tires to seal with my foot pump, not knowing at the time that an air compressor was not only convenient, but required. I failed miserably, threw away my economy-sized bottle of tire sealant, and went back to what I knew, tubes. Fast forward a decade, and I was bringing my mountain bike into the local bike shop for an upgrade from rigid to hardtail. While I had enjoyed riding a rigid frame as a downtown bicycle courier, I had replaced my slick tires with knobbies. I was primarily riding off-road on technical single track on my mountain bike, and I needed a suspension fork. I bought a new set of tires at the same time as my 29 by 3-inch front tire wouldn't fit in the front fork. The shop just assumed that, like everybody else, I would want tubeless tires on my mountain bike. So while looking at the itemized receipt that I noticed the charge, "Tubeless?" I asked the shop manager, but I wanted tubes. In response, he promised me to make it right if I didn't like tubeless. So in this episode, we'll be hearing from my fellow cyclists about going tubeless. If you have a story about cycling that you'd like to share, email me at tellmeaboutyrbike@gmail.com. All right, nice bike shirt. Is that Eddie Merckx I see?
That is a red kite prayer Eddie Merckx t-shirt.
All right. Well, I am wearing my, I don't know if you can see it in the pictures, I'm wearing my Hawaiian bicycle shirt.
Oh, sweet shirt. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Thanks. So, welcome to Tell Me About Your Bike. And just a quick intro for our listeners. Who are you and how long you been biking?
I'm Dale Sargent. I've been biking for more years than most people have been alive.
All right.
And when you said bike, like most cyclists, I've got a whole fleet of them. I've got tandem, mountain bike, cyclocross bike, a couple of gravel bikes, a couple of road bikes, retro steel bike. Kind of a bike nut like a lot of people are.
Yeah. So I recently went tubeless, and sort of against my will. I wasn't planning on it, but I brought my mountain bike into the shop to get the rigid fork replaced with a suspension fork prior to a race, and the shop went ahead and installed tubeless for me, and I was like, oh, okay. And I said, well, I told him, I said, I didn't ask for this. I was kind of happy with tubes, but yeah, I mean, the rims were tubeless ready and the tires were tubeless ready, so I guess they just see it so much that they figured he'd want tubeless.
Go for it,
Yeah. So I had initially tried about 4 or 5 years ago to go tubeless on my mountain bike, and it was a big mess, and it was unsuccessful, and I ended up putting tubes back into it. So I've put a couple 100 miles on it now, tubeless. I did a 4-hour race tubeless. And liking it so far, not really having any big difference in terms of rolling resistance. I'm still Still rolling at about 20 psi on 29 by 2.35 tires, which is what I was riding on when I had tubes in it, and I wasn't getting any pinch flats. So that hasn't been a big change for me yet, but I'm still carrying my tubes just to be on the safe side. For backup, just in case I do get a puncture that's too big for the sealant to seal.
Makes sense. And look, I was an early adopter to tubeless way back in the early days of it, when you would take strapping tape to seal up the spoke holes and go down to the hobby shop and buy a can of or a jar of latex,
right,
and dilute that with some water and dump that in and pump it up, hope it didn't explode and blow latex all over the garage. And because where I mountain bike, the primary areas get just loaded with locust thorns, and so everybody's either having to run slime tubes or liners or really heavy duty tubes and heavy duty tires. And it's just ideal for where I mountain bike a lot, because the thorns are just atrocious. And, I'll get done at the end of the season, pull the tires off, and man, it looks like I've run over porcupines out there.
Wow.
So for mountain bike, it's been fantastic for me. Now I still carry a tube because there's a lot of chunk rock, and you can slash a tire, and I've got all the stuff set up mountain bike to repair it. So I've got a spare tube, I've got tire levers, I've got stuff to boot it if I need to, and I've got the little bacon strips to plug a hole if I get one too big to seal. So I'm dialed in on the mountain bike. Gravel bike, one of my gravel bikes, I'm set up tubeless. I think it's fine. Zero issues with that.
And how about your road bikes?
Well, that's a different story. And I'm running some nice Vittoria tires, set of Loon deep section carbon wheels, and they were just really tough to get on. I go back to the old days where you could just roll a tire on and off with your hands, slip a tube in, shoot a CO2, and you're good to go. Well, you get the new stuff, built a new bike up, built a new felt up with some nice SRAM wireless. Love the setup. But had occasion to try to fix a flat, and operator error, 100%. So if any of your listeners want to say Dale's an idiot, I own it. I'm an idiot. I completely blew it. So I coming in from a ride, went over a little area and flatted. Well, I didn't have enough sealant in there, but I've got a tube with me, tube and levers, no problem. Well, I pull over. Well, crap! Now I need an Allen wrench. I forgot, and I didn't have Allen wrenches with me. Fortunately, my wife's a couple of miles away, and she's a long-suffering love of my life that bailed me out and picked me up. Got home and thought, okay, well, I'll just pop this off, patch that little spot, put some more sealant in there. I fought and fought and fought to get that bead unseated, and yeah, I'm a 98-pound weakling. I'm okay admitting that.
Right.
But I couldn't get that unseated. I fought for 15 minutes. Finally got it to pop off, and then fight to get the tire back off and clean it up and all that. I went online and found where somebody had a 1x4. And they would use that to put on the tire bead and step on it to unseat the bead.
Interesting.
Well, holy crap. Now I got to carry sealant, tube, lever, pump, CO2, and a lumberyard with me to change a tire if I need to out in the field. When it works great, it works great. But, oh, my goodness, when it doesn't, it's just a mess. And I'm like every other amateur out there. I'm out there riding around at race occasionally, group rides, and I don't have a support vehicle that's got a spare bike for me to jump on.
Right.
You flat, and all your buddies are looking at you like you knucklehead. Now we got to sit here for 15 minutes while you futz around with your tire. And I was by myself, so I didn't inconvenience anybody other than my wife. But I've been on rides where that's happened, and it's certainly a lot slower, a lot more laborious than it was just a generation ago in tire tube technology.
Right. Well, I have been hearing good things about this new product called the Tyre Glider, which is a proprietary tire iron. Comes out of England.
Okay.
And so they're selling on Amazon for about $16, and apparently you just need one of them, and it just slides the tire bead off and slides it back on in place. I haven't bought one yet, but it's on my list but I also feel like I don't want to mess with my tires because right now they're doing exactly what I want them to, and I don't want to change anything. So you might want to check out the Tyre Glider. I'll include a link in it.
I will look into that. That'll beat carrying a 1x4 around with me.
Yeah. So good things about that I've heard. So tell me some other experiences with tubeless tires.
Well, I put sealant in again, going back to the early days of mountain bikes. So I've got the sealant in. I got mixed my latex up, and I've got it in there. I've got the tire, and I'm trying to get it seated. And I found just a CO2 works really good to pop the bead and get that seated. Well, then I'm going to pump it up to make sure the bead's fully out there on the sidewall. Pumping up, watching the tire gauge, 30, 40. I'm waiting for that little pop when it seats. Well, I didn't hear a little pop. I heard a blam, and I've got sealant all over the place.
No.
That's like, crap. That wasn't what I wanted to do. But those have really been the only two problems I've had with it. But I'm rethinking the whole tubeless thing on my road bike, and I've got buddies that have been on it for years. They go, "Hey, it's great." And yeah, this was operator error. I put sealant back in them. I'll run it like that, but I am dreading another middle of the ride having to mess with it.
Now, how often do you replace your sealant?
In the mountain bike, I'll a couple times a year.
Okay.
And two new on the road bike. I don't have 4 months on it yet. So.
Okay.
And I think is that the recommended 6 months or?
I've read other places people were saying a year. So 6 months or a year sounds pretty reasonable.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm still new to it, so I'm like, okay, well, so I've just been reading up online and seeing what folks are saying, and there's a lot of folks who are just saying once a year, but I think you run the risk that if you get too many flats, you're going to run out of sealant, and then you're going to need a tube.
And that's the issue with where I mountain bike a lot. There's so many thorns and areas that you get puncture that. There's just lots of little seal holes on the tire when I take it off, but I mean it's cool because it shows it's working. Works. It's working.
Yeah, I've been looking at my bike and looking to see if there's any sealant on the frame, and so far I haven't seen any. So apparently I haven't run across anything although I rode across a patch of glass today, but I was riding on my knobby tires, and so I don't even think the glass pierced the knobs. So I think I'm okay. Nice. Yeah. I'm completely sold on it for mountain bike. It's I would never go back on mountain bike. Road bike, I'm still a little up in the air about it. All right. Well, thanks so much for talking, Dale.
You bet. Fun conversation.
All right.
Best of luck out there. Ride safe.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back to Tell Me About Your Bike, Liz. How you been doing?
Hey there. How are you, Wes?
I'm doing great. Again, I want to talk to you about tubeless tires today.
Sure. Well, I'd like to say first that, of course, I'm not an expert on anything mechanical, but you and I have chatted about this before, and I guess maybe I could speak to it from more of a pedestrian standpoint, or the standpoint of someone who uses them, but then they have limitations as far as working on them.
Right. So how long you been riding tubeless?
Well, I got my first rim set for tubeless 5 years ago. So I've had tubeless on my gravel bike for 5 years. and I have it on another gravel bike. So both my gravel bikes have tubeless, and they're the only ones that I'm running tubeless on currently.
Not running it on your mountain bike?
No, primarily because my mountain bike is, over 15 years old right now. So, based on my, certainly the rims that I have on there, are not tubeless,
Right.
ready rims. But, I mean, I wouldn't put the time into upgrading that, a 26er for tubeless. But yeah, I mean, if I got a mountain bike today, that would be the way to go.
Yeah. What do you see as the advantages to tubeless?
Well, okay, so it's lighter, a little.
Mm-hmm.
I like the feel a lot. I could certainly tell the difference. But, I was running this same rim when I first got these Ritchie rims. I was running with tubes, and then I converted it to tubeless. And, it was definitely a different feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like the feel a lot. I like the idea of, it sealing for minor things or for smaller things, automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the choices now, I guess an advantage would be that that's what's being sold for, gravel bikes and mountain bikes. So there are more choices. I just recently got the carbon gravel bike, the 9er RLT, and I wanted 12 speed, and I was limited to even how for the gearing that I wanted to run in the back. I was limited to a couple of rims as it was, and of course both of them were going to be tubeless ready. So at this point, an advantage is that for sure there are a lot of choices out, or I shouldn't say that. The choices that are there are going to be tubeless ready. So.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how many times have you discovered that you had gotten a puncture and the tubeless had sealed it for you?
Well, that's a good question, because I'm not sure that it has happened, but I assume that I don't always know. I can tell you that I got a complete flat with the tubeless when a staple type thing got in there. It was during the $150 competition, as a matter of fact, down there in North Carolina, and riding along, and suddenly it was air out immediately, and I had to stop. And the plan, of course, when all air is out, is get a tube in there.
Right.
So I went to do that. I never saw the staple. I didn't find that until a couple months later. I can tell you about that in a second. But
yeah.
I looked through the rim. I couldn't find anything. And, of course, I was going as fast as I could because it was a competition. And got the tube in, got it settled on the rim and everything. But then immediately I started thinking, am I even going to be able to get this on? Am I going to be able to get enough air in here so that the tire seeds? And a truck pulled up with, kind of a support truck, and he had a floor pump. So I was able to put air in with the floor pump instead of my CO2s and my hand pump, which was good. It didn't fully seat the tire, and I did have a bubble in it, or what do you call that? Like a place where it doesn't pop up all the way on the rim.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But at least I had plenty of air in it, and I could finish the event with a tube in it. Now later, I had a bunch of weight on it, and I was on the C&O Canal up past DC, and I got a flat. And I still had that same tube in there. I hadn't gone through the trouble of, pulling it out, finding out what had happened. And that's when I found the staple.
Ah.
And thankfully I had tweezers with me, and I was able to pull it all out of the tire and, put another tube in there. But, it was a pretty it definitely flattened the tire without sealing it, but it was something pretty big. So
Wow, that sounds dramatic, Liz.
well, and what's crazy is I didn't go through the trouble of after the competition, before doing the bike packing trip, of taking the tire off the rim, figuring out what was up. And part of the reason I didn't is because it had been so messy dealing with putting the tube in this tire that had all the sealant in there. So I was like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with a mess. And it's holding up just fine, so that's why I didn't mess with it.
Have you messed with it since then?
Oh yeah, I've replaced those tires since then. I mean, the tire was fine once I got the staple out, but it's a different set of tires on there now. This has been a couple years.
Ah, gotcha. So is that your messiest tubeless story?
I would say yes, that's the messiest. But I got to tell you about what I consider kind of another messy is with the tubeless, I want to do what I do with all my tires, and that's rotate them. And so comes time last year, and I said, okay, well, I want to rotate my tires, and I am going to go ahead and pay somebody to do the setup, but I can pull them off and get them cleaned because I didn't want to pay somebody to clean them.
Right.
So, I talked to Kyle at ECB. He was East Coast Bikes at the time, and he's like, oh, this stuff is great. And he sold me some sealant remover. I'm like, oh, fantastic. I can pull the tires off and do my own cleaning. Well, those guys must have stronger hands than I do, because I put this stuff on there and I couldn't get the sealant off. I mean, talk about messy. It's just like I was scrubbing at it and it was going little by little, and it's like, okay, this is going to take a lot more time and patience than I've got. I barely got them clean. So I do think it's when we start talking about disadvantages, I mean, maybe somebody has a better way of cleaning them than I do, but even with sealant remover, I had a hard time getting it off the tire.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't say that I've actually done it yet. My tires got set up tubeless by a shop in Charleston back in May, and I haven't actually done anything to them yet. I've just pumped them up a few times, and that's been it. But they just assumed that I wanted it to be tubeless, and I was planning on sticking with tubes because I know tubes, and I'm a bit of a tech curmudgeon, and so so I got upgraded against my will. But it's turned out fine, I mean, and me, I like riding at low PSIs on my mountain bike, like around 15, 20 PSI. So it works out fine for my style of riding, and I don't have any complaints yet. But I also, I haven't put any new sealant in yet. I haven't rotated the tires yet, so I still have a little bit of a ways to go on them.
It's funny you say that, they assumed you wanted the setup, but what's weird is, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure I am probably mistaken in some ways, but the bikes are being sold, it's like, okay, well, here's the tubeless, but they're being sold with tubes in them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they're set up that way. So I don't even know what you call that. So we've got this upgrade, this better thing, but then the bikes aren't being sold with it. They're being sold with the tubes, probably because of what it would take to maintain the tubeless while it sits on the shelf.
Yes, that was what I was thinking.
So I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of disconnect there. When I think about, what I'm looking for in a bike, one of the big things is, okay, what type of rim does it have? Am I going to be able to get a tire on and off the rim?
Right.
I have bought all of my rims in recent years, and all my tires based on whether I can pull them on and off the bike. And, this has just added a completely different element to everything, because the tubeless ready rims are just, it's a tighter seal. And then the tires that are made for tubeless my experience here is that it's much harder to get them on and off the rim.
Yeah.
I have found tires that, the Maxxis Ramblers, I'm able to get them on and off at least a Ritchie rim and an Easton rim. I recently, with my new bike, got these Boyd aluminum rims, which are just awesome. But I have not experimented yet with even taking them on and off. The tubeless is set up, and I don't want to take them off right now, because then I'd have to get it resealed and all. But I'm sure hoping I can get those Ramblers on and off the Boyd rims okay. And, I completely buy tires and rims, based on whether I can move them on and off. I didn't have the choice with the Boyd. Going back to the purchase, the type of gearing I wanted, with 12 speed in the back, I was pretty much, I could only choose from a couple of rims. And so, I have a great set of rims, but like I say, I hope I can get my hands on them to get the tires on and off.
Yeah.
My favorite hands-on story, I don't know if you remember this, Wes, was you, Jerry Hadley, Robert Sawyer. Three of probably the best hands on this side of the New River,
Right.
And we had that flat that night, out there in West Ghent when we were doing the night ride. Brittany McDonald's tire on her cross bike, it was a cyclocross bike at the time, had a flat, and you three passed around that rim and couldn't get that tire off the rim. And I'm like, talk about, a useless rim to someone who, like Brittany or me, we're not going to be able to get that tire off if you guys can't get it off.
Right.
And I had to recall, it was an Easton rim. I do have a set of Easton rims that came with my first gravel bike. I can get things on and off that one, but whatever the model was of that one, it just wasn't going. So
Yeah, I recently bought a new tool online. I saw it for it on Facebook, and I saw a couple of people in some of the bike groups saying this thing's amazing. So it's a different design for a tire lever. Comes out of England, and I forget what it's called right now, but I'll put a link in the show notes. It's supposed to make it much easier to get tires on and off the rims. So I haven't had a chance to try it out yet, hoping to never have to, but we'll see how things go.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think with these developments in tires, we need more options for levers. So I would love to check those out.
Yeah, I'll send you the link when I publish, but it's not the traditional tire lever design that you see, and those things, I've snapped those. It's not too hard to break those trying to get a tire off of a rim. So I'm hoping that with this new one, it's much beefier. I'm hoping it's able to handle the tighter beads that you seem to find on tubeless tires these days.
Yep.
All right, Liz. Well, thanks for talking. I sure appreciate it, and we'll check back with you later.
Okay. Thanks, Wes.
So I rode tubeless for the first time, and nothing seemed to change. And that was a good thing. I still carried a tube, a pump, a patch kit, and a tire tool in my Camelback, but I had no opportunity to use them. I didn't seem to be getting any flats. Then one day, months later, my rear tire was a little soft. Cursory inspection revealed no punctures, so I just put some more air in. But that air leaked out too, and I realized it was time for more sealant. I had a hole, and there wasn't enough sealant in the tire to seal it. So I went to a bike shop in the next town over where I was riding trails and bought a bottle of tire sealant. I injected some more sealant in the parking lot, brought my bike into the shop and used the air compressor to fill my tires. And since then, no complaints. I'm building up a new hill climbing touring bike, my Mountaineer Unicorn. It'll have 700 by 40mm tires, and I'm feeling confident enough to go tubeless on them. Let the good times roll. So thanks for listening to another episode of Tell Me About Your Bike. Please subscribe to Tell Me About Your Bike on your preferred podcasting platform and share the show with a friend. Go ahead, text it to him now. Reviews of Tell Me About Your Bike help get the show out to more people. You can follow Tell Me About Your Bike on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Keep the rubber side down and keep rolling. Cheers, y'all. Copyright Rambling Ukulele Productions 2025. All rights reserved.